we were able to provide additional food and nutrition services. We've been feeding our students, looking at a curriculum instruction, building maintenance, including the reconfiguration of health suites, access points, laboratories, traffic flow, sanitizing buildings, and installing hand washing stations, professional development, and more importantly, the technology as we move to a one-to-one student device ratio. We were also able to provide Chromebooks for our paraeducators, as well as hotspots, software, and software licenses. So as the time we opened this current school year, we had distributed about 57,000 devices K-12. As I mentioned about the meals, that has been an ongoing process for us to provide meals to our students. And so since we actually closed since the pandemic and what we've done during the summer, we were able to provide over 2,497,000 meals for students. Quick update about our cyber attack. We are still in the review, repair, recovery phase of our cyber attack. This process, of course, will take some time. Since the cyber attack on November 24th, we were beginning to restore many of our services, including our enterprise resource planning or ERP system. I know there's been questions about our W-2s. W-2 statements were mailed on March the 1st. We have asked for an extension from the IRS due to the cyber attack. And we will continue to seek advice on the efficacy of the W-2 documents, which we have. And we're pleased that we have been working with our Maryland's Comptroller's Office to provide additional support or to answer questions from our employees. As you all know, March 1st, we started our hybrid learning. So it was a joy to watch students and staff reunite during the first week of hybrid in-person learning at our 4 public separate day schools and our elementary schools in preschool through grade 2. Our phase-in return continued March 8th as more school-based staff returned in advance of the first in-person days for the week of March 15th for students in grades 3 through 12 who are served outside of general ed, as well as select career and technical education students who will be notified by their schools. And with that, schools and offices have been required to follow the 5 mitigation practices recommended by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which means consistent and correct use of face coverings, social distancing to the extent possible, frequent hand washing and covering of coughs and sneezes, cleaning and disinfecting, and of course, contact tracing led by our own Office of Health Services in collaboration with Baltimore County Health Department. We were pleased to begin looking at athletics as we collaborated with the Baltimore County Department of Health, which allowed us inter-county competitive games beginning March 12th. So we will continue to collaborate and partner with the Maryland Department of Health, MSDE, and of course our own Baltimore County Health Department. A lot of conversations around vaccines. We do have a COVID-19 task force where we collaborate not only with staff internally, but also representatives from the Baltimore County Health Department. And so we have been working with Dr. Branch and his team to coordinate registration of staff for vaccines. Access to the vaccine is, of course, contingent upon availability. Prior to Sunday, approximately 3,000 individuals have received a link to the Baltimore County Department of Health vaccination sign up. And on this past Sunday, it was Educators Day for the majority of those who were coming through. I was there volunteering. We received about 900, close to 1,000 doses of the vaccine for appointments. So we were able to get additional staff if they so choose to participate. And on additional good news, I would like to share that one of our principals at Relay Elementary School, Jason Barnett, was named the Administrator of the Year by the Maryland School Counselor Association. Additionally, Dr. Amalio Nueves, Executive Director of Social Emotional Support, received the Dr. Vivian Lee School Counselor Advocate of the Year by the Maryland School Counselor Association. So I want to thank you for the continued partnership and advocacy and supporting the staff and students of Baltimore County Public Schools. And at this time, I will turn it back over to Chair Jones. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Williams. And I think it's worth noting that you had requested this meeting to give us an update. And I know I did not say that earlier, but I think it's worth noting. And we appreciate you taking the time to come and brief us. And I know we have quite a few questions. So what I'll do, I will certainly, as always, I'll refer to my colleagues, and I have a few questions of my own, but I'll let them go first. Any questions from any of the members?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilman Marks.
Hey, thank you. First of all, Dr. Williams, thank you very much for reconsidering the athletic events. I really appreciate you doing that. And I know that has been greeted very well by a lot of people throughout the county. I just have a couple questions. First, I know the school system recently made plans to cut 120 positions. Can you just go into some of the logic behind that?
So sure. First, let me acknowledge that the work with athletics was truly a collaborative effort. Again, worked well with our partners in the Department of Health, Baltimore County Department of Health. In terms of the positions, when we had our official enrollment count as of September 30th, we had a decrease of students. And so the 120 positions, roughly 120 positions, were those positions that were not filled. So we didn't furlough anyone but we looked at how could we kind of balance that budget with our enrollment. And so those positions were vacant. And we assume that as we continue to bring back students, that we anticipate our enrollment will continue to grow. In talking to colleagues across the state of Maryland and outside, I'm a part of a consortium of superintendents in various states. There was an impact of enrollment. And so we anticipate that we will see growth and we would adjust accordingly. So those positions, my understanding, and Dr. Scriven's on the line if he can clarify something I need to clarify, but those positions that we didn't cut people, they were just vacant positions. We didn't have the transition of staff like we usually would have at the end of the school year. Right. So I hope that answered your question.
Sure. Two other quick questions and then I'll be done. Thank you for addressing the issue of the W-2s. I know in the email that Tony Bazemore sent us, it said that there were tax experts in the field who were going through those forms. Could you just describe who those are, just to make sure that they're compliant with the the state and federal tax services? Who are the tax experts?
So it's our experts that are working with the enterprise. I don't have their name. I can follow up, sure. But it was the experts following up with our whole human resources software. And in addition, our team was able to make contact with the comptroller's office just to confirm as we continue to restore our services. It is our hope to have some of that enterprise resource planning, particularly the W-2, to be on our website electronically. But that's the work that the team is doing right now. But I can follow up. I don't have the names.
Sure, no problem. And the final thing is, are we considering a 4-day a week option? I know other jurisdictions are looking at that for students returning.
So right now, what we are looking at additional support for students. The way the cohort planning is operating, 2 days for cohort A and then a day for cleaning and disinfecting, even in addition to what happens during the 2 days of the cohort. And so as we continue to do our phase in, we'll be looking at additional options for our students. And so we're going to consider a lot of options because there are a variety of needs. Because we're so large, we felt it was necessary to have a phase-in approach. A lot of the other districts are doing similar, but thus this past week, it's been great to see our staff and some of our students back. But we're going to look at options, whether it's during the week, whether it is weekends, whether it's extended summer. We want to provide as many options for our students to really accelerate the learning. Keep in mind, there's some students who felt hybrid or virtual was working, but we do recognize that some students may not have had great success with virtual learning.
Right. Thank you again. Thank you also once again for your help with the sports. And I know the county executive and his staff were very much involved with that. So thanks again, Dr. Williams.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Marks.
Chairman Jones?
Yes, Councilwoman Bevins.
Thank you, Chairman Jones. Dr. Williams, it's good to see you today, and thank you for giving us these updates. I know your time is valuable, so I certainly appreciate it. And at this time, I'd like to recognize what a huge asset Tony Bazemore is to the County Council as a liaison between your huge, vast system and county government. So he's very much in the know and is very responsive, and I greatly appreciate that as a legislator. If you don't mind, Dr. Williams, can we go back a little bit in the past, and not what this discussion has mainly been about, and only because I still have teachers and parents that are still inquiring about the ransomware. And I guess a couple of questions were, was that ever paid? And where is the investigation at this point?
So I will share that the investigation is still ongoing. We have, as you well know, we have worked with our insurance. We've had experts in the field to work with us. I think they have been providing the board regular updates, and it is still ongoing. They are allowing us to do the review, repair, and recovery phase. In terms of the actual investigation, I think that will probably be a follow-up. What I thought we would have some information. Again, the experts are still looking. It's a little bit bigger than, as you will know, bigger than just within this area. So working with our experts in the FBI, I think that would be more than likely a follow-up. But I would request that I would take those questions back, Ms. Bevins, back to the board leadership, so they know there's an interest that you all have about some updates regarding the investigation.
So just so I have an understanding, and maybe I'm missing something, and maybe I'm not, but so you're saying that the board has some of this information, but they have information has not been shared with us. They still have that information, and you will let them know we're still inquiring, but that information is not allowed to be released to the county council.
Well, the only thing I'm saying is The board has made it clear to me about the efforts and how they want to proceed. Again, because of the partners outside of the county and the insurance, the board is involved, and I think it may be appropriate if I take this back to them, probably in a different session, to let them know there's an interest about the specifics around the investigation.
Okay, do you have any assistance with the state and local government on that? Because it's been over 3 months, so I'm just curious, is the school system doing this alone, or is this one big effort to get to the bottom of what happened and how we can prevent it from happening again? And just so we have a timeline for recovery.
Sure. So the state was involved, working collaboratively with the county council initially. Then it became the work of our vendors to help us to work through the repair and recovery, and a lot of that is the mitigation, so this wouldn't happen again. And so we are now working with our vendors to restore, and those who've done this work before around this type of work, they have been very instrumental in working with our individuals, our Department of Instructional Technology, to recover, to again, to provide mitigation strategies, and but there's still an ongoing investigation, it's my understanding. So we, with the FBI and experts, so we're pretty confident that what we're doing has restored us, as you well know, 3 days, all 3 days after Thanksgiving break, that we were able to at least bring back or start connecting or reuniting our students and staff. A lot of this is just the recovery phase, you know, what we have access to, what we don't have access to, how we're rebuilding systems, and that's going to take some time.
Okay, I want to thank you for talking about the W-2 issue, because I did have some questions about that. But are there ongoing payroll issues for our teachers and staff within the system, or have they been fixed?
Well, what we're seeing is some of the issues may be, back in January, we did our first payroll run, and we addressed some issues with staff, those who didn't have direct deposit. So I think every payroll run, we were able to tweak and modify and improve. Again, some of the issues is the fact that our enterprise resource planning system, heavily with HR, we are restoring. And so we continue to encourage our staff to reach out to payroll, reach out to human resources if there are questions. So each time we run a payroll, we learn certain things and we tweak them to try to improve. I won't say it's 100%. Again, this is some heavy lifting when it comes to our HR system and payroll. But what we're finding each time we run it, we learn or we improve. And again, we want to make sure that we are accessible for staff if they have questions or concerns.
No, thank you for that. So I guess my question is, has everybody been made whole? Because from what I'm understanding, there has been some tuition reimbursement that hasn't been paid to teachers. And of course, if you talk to most teachers, they'll say, well, they use that reimbursement tuition to pay for their next classes that they sign up for. And it seems to be an issue with that. Is that being remedied at this time, or is that still an issue?
So I won't say it's 100%, but again, there are some nuances. And if we know about it specifically, we just encourage the staff to reach out so we can resolve it. Again, I won't say it's 100%, but each time we run a payroll, each time we do the time, we learn, we kind of fix some of these outliers or some things that we just didn't anticipate. I won't say it's 100% at this point, because everyone's situation is slightly different. But again, we have been working with our vendors to help us restore, and then we ask our staff to just follow up. It's each week we collaborate. I collaborate with our union partners, and we talk about some of these ongoing issues to try to resolve it. So that communication has been helpful.
Okay, and I have two more questions, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. I'd like to switch gears to COVID. And now that our students are back and teachers and some staff is back, could you tell me the protocol for what's happening in schools, let's say, because there have been some COVID outbreaks, but you're not hearing that on the news at night. I'm not getting emails about it, but I know positively there have been staff with COVID. And if not the staff with COVID, they have been exposed to someone with COVID and now they're being quarantined. So when that happens in each individual school, is it the principal that is just handling that information within the school, or does that information go to you? Because I'm not hearing about it. I don't know if my other colleagues are hearing about it. I haven't been updated like by the county executive about like what percentages so far of folks going back to work, even hybrid, if there's any positive issues. So can you tell me like what those numbers are and like how are you handling that?
So an outbreak would be multiple students or staff in a particular classroom or a particular area and working collaboratively with the Baltimore County Department of Health to then make some decisions if it's an outbreak to look at a whole classroom going back to virtual, or maybe shutting down a part of a school building or the entire school. What's happening, there may be individual cases, and because it's one case may have happened in a classroom, one case that may have happened from a group of individuals, we can contain that. So we wouldn't make that public. We will notify those individuals. That contact tracing, as I mentioned, one of the mitigation strategies. So that individual would be interviewed or have a conversation. Our system would work collaboratively with the Baltimore County Department of Health to talk about what we know, and collaboratively we would decide what the next steps will be. And so what we're experiencing would not necessarily be an outbreak unless there are multiple kids, multiple staff in one area, confined area. And so if we have a situation where we think it's COVID-like symptoms, we would work with the principal to talk about what I call a huddle. We would come together virtually and just talk through what we know. And then our Office of Health Services would begin looking at contact tracing in terms of who may have been around that individual, to then inform those individuals that you may have been in contact with an individual that may have demonstrated COVID-like symptoms. And then we would work with the schools. So the school principals would not be by themselves. We would work with them, our Office of Human Services, Health Services, that school principal, the Department of Health from Baltimore County, Dr. Branch or someone on his team. We will work, and the school side of our school system, that would be an executive director or community superintendent. They will all talk through the situation and then determine those next steps.
Well, I heard everybody, that's great that that's happening. I've heard everybody mentioned except parents. So.
Well, I'm sorry, a letter would go home. A letter would go home to the individuals, those who may have been in contact. I apologize. I missed that one. That's a very important piece. We would have to communicate that there was a situation, and more than likely suggest the individual, if we get to that point, suggest the individual to quarantine for X number of days.
Okay, and I only have one more question for now. I know that the school system has received CARES money, as well as Baltimore County government has received CARES money. Can you tell me how much you received and how much is left and what you spent it on?
So, give me a minute. So we received funds, we spent the funds for food and nutrition, for hotspots. We talked about the facility maintenance. I don't have the figure in front of me, Ms. Bevins. I can provide that. A lot of it was around the technology, getting us, we were not a one-to-one student device. We did not have that ratio. In addition, we know that the State Department shared that we have up until April to define what we want to do with the remaining funds, but I will have to follow up for the exact dollar amount. I will say right now, as we're bringing back students, I want to look at funds to support any additional tutorial services, resources for our students, just to keep it student oriented. But that will be, I'll have to follow up with the exact amount of money.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman,
That's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman,
1 second, Councilman Catch. Let's let Councilman Quirk get in there. He was going to be next. He
okay.
has one question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually have a few questions, but I'll be brief. Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Superintendent, and we, of course, appreciate Teddy Bazemore, Michael Dickerson, and your team. So I guess a question, in follow-up to Councilwoman Bevins, if ransomware was indeed paid, are we confident that our insurance would pay the full amount, or do you anticipate having any request come budget time in mid-May to the county council or even to the board, the school board?
So it was a good thing we have coverage. So majority of the expenses we are finalizing, as I mentioned, the biggest heavy lift is just the human resources piece. There may be, as we get close to the year, we'll be able to calculate the final amount when we hope to wrap this all up. But a lot of it was spent on our repair and recovery phase of the work. And so the board has asked a similar question. And as we are still working through some of these major issues, again, human resources, our enterprise, revenue planning, I think we'll have a better idea come May or June. But right now, we have worked well with our vendors, and we are using our vendors to help us repair and recovery. So don't know the final amounts now, because every time we think we have resolved an issue, sometimes there's some nice surprises we're able to recover. Sometimes we have to rebuild. And so I'll have a better idea in a few months. But right now, I'm pretty confident that our partners, our vendors have been working. They have been very good about this work. They've done this work before and working with a cyber attack. So I anticipate there may be some additional costs, but right now I won't have those final amounts until later in spring, maybe May or June. But definitely, you know, we will let you all know, of course, if we have to request anything additionally, or if we have to do a transfer of some sort.
So just kind of reading between the lines and just trying to understand this better. I guess the direct question is, did Baltimore County Public Schools pay ransom? I mean, it's just a direct question.
So I appreciate you reading in between the lines. You know, we've used our resources to help us repair and restore.
And so I guess in mid-May, I think is when we have the budget for Baltimore County school system. As you know, the Baltimore County Council needs to approve the budget. Do you think we will have an answer by then on this direct question?
On the direct question, it is my hope, as we work with our outside experts, it is my hope that we will have an answer to that question.
Okay, and I think I speak for the council, the entire council, I believe, in saying that we also very much hope to truly understand this, representing the taxpayers, the final authority on, you know, approving the budget or not approving the budget. So I really do hope that we can get some clarity on that, because I know, speaking on my own behalf, I'm not prepared to vote on the budget until we have a better answer on that one. And then my next question is, what are we doing specifically, Baltimore County Public Schools, to absolutely make sure that we have a 5-day-a-week school for the entire system starting in the fall? Or what are we prepared for that? Is this something that we're actively planning for? Is that something that you can assure the council that we can count on come the fall?
So that's a good question. It is my hope that we can get to that point by the fall. There are, of course, not necessarily knowing what the pandemic is doing. As I mentioned, we meet weekly with members from the health department. We call it our COVID-19 task force. And so we look at the data, we look at trends, we look at what's happening outside of Maryland, as well as what's happening within our county. I think that's a fair question, Mr. Quirk. I hope that after all of this that we've learned, that we can, by the fall, have a 5 days a week. But again, that's contingent upon what's happening with this pandemic. It's also contingent upon our vaccines. So I've already shared with the team that I hope we can get to that point in the fall. I think our students need that, and I know our parents want that, and I know our teachers miss their students. But yeah, in addition, I have regular meetings with our state superintendent, and we talk about kind of that long-term planning. As you well know, as preparing for the beginning of the school year really starts in March, and it continues throughout the summer. So that's my hope. Actually, is my hope and prayer that we get to by the fall 5 days a week.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then hopefully it's more than hope. Hopefully it's going to be a plan, and we make it happen. It's just too many parents struggling right now, too many kids struggling. So I trust and have confidence that we'll do everything we can to make sure all our kids are back to school 5 days a week by the fall. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome now, Councilman Catch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Williams. As a follow-up question, first of all, I was going to ask about the fall and a 5-day schedule. My question now, though, is what metrics did you use to determine the number of days we'd have in-person learning in the beginning?
So in the beginning, we used the document that came from the Maryland State Department of Education, the Maryland Health Department, which had the metrics based on the positivity rate. And in talking with Dr. Salmon and her team and looking at a schedule for students, and looking at the CDC guidelines, is referencing small groups of students, but it also talked about the mitigation strategies, including the cleaning and disinfecting. So we used that. Our plan was shared with the board back in November. We had planned to start way back in November with our 4 public separate day schools. And then our young students, we were looking at the end of November, but at the time the metric was telling us we had to really put a pause based on what was happening in our county. So the plan that we had was a cohort 2 days a week with 1 day, again, cleaning and disinfecting with each and every day, but 1 day off and another group of kids for the second cohort. So we initially used the document that was shared, that was jointly developed by MSDE and the Maryland Health Department.
Do you expect MSDE and the Maryland Health Department to update these metrics? Is there a possibility that the metrics would improve to the point where we would be open for in-person learning for a greater number of days a week or hours a week?
So that is a possibility that we will get an updated document. We have received updated information from CDC. We've been using that to guide our work as well. And so I think that's possible. Right now, I'm not aware of something coming out now, but Dr. Salmon has been good about giving us updates. And in addition, the health department meets with the Maryland Health Department kind of weekly. And so I get an opportunity to kind of sit into those discussions and just hear. So again, as a pandemic, this is a health pandemic, and we lean more on our experts to help guide us in what our next steps may be. So there may be some additional changes as we continue to finish out this year.
Thank you. My next question, these questions all come from constituents. Can you be specific in regard to safety and mitigation measures that have been taken in the school buildings, such as social distancing, air filtration, ventilation? What about schools that don't have any windows or limited ventilation?
So I will say that our school staff, our principals, our central office leaders have been preparing for this hybrid learning where we were anticipating students coming back. And in addition, we partnered with the county executive. So we looked at the mitigation strategies as you talked about, the mask, the hand sanitizer. But in addition to that, our principals, along with our facilities and security, they have actually gone and looked at each classroom. So one task for the leadership team at every school, along with the principal, was to look at his or her own configuration of the school and to look at those mitigation strategies that make sure there's signage up, to make sure there's social distancing. Either I've seen this as I've been in schools this week and last week, tape on the floors to show the distance, to help our families to understand what it will look and feel like as they would be bringing students to school, dropping students to school. So there's a lot of the signage. There's a lot of work that took place before students and staff return. And then every school has kind of a health and safety group that will look at the configuration and see if things needed to be tweaked. In addition, for those areas that may have had a concern, maybe not a window, we tried to displace staff, or if we couldn't, we had some air purifiers placed in those unique spaces. So we looked at every school, 175 schools. So right now, elementary, and we're preparing for additional groups, but we're looking at all 175 schools, including our 4 public day schools, and really looked at each configuration to look at how students would enter, how they would exit, where staff would be, where they would be situated in their buildings. And so I would say it was customized. Our staff and central office folks worked real hard. We gave them a guideline or framework, but then they had to take that and really apply it to their individual school setting.
Good. I have spoken with some friends of mine who are teachers, and since they're friends of mine, they're not new teachers. So, and a couple of them have some health concerns. They are concerned about the fact that they have not been vaccinated, and so what their question is, if you are a teacher, you're required to return to class. If a teacher has other health issues, are there some provisions being made for those teachers who have these extenuating circumstances that would make them weaker should they get COVID?
So thank you for that. That was a question several of our board members have been raising. What I did in working collaboratively with Ms. Lowry, the acting chief of human resources, to deploy additional staff to look at these circumstances, looking at them case by case. We have additional staff to work in that particular office. We ask that there's either staff inquiring or staff members have started the process. So I would encourage individuals to continue to work with human resources based on specific situations. If they're seeking ADA accommodations, we really want to make sure we have that interactive process with the individual, but also that staff member supervisors to see what kind of accommodations would be appropriate. And so HR has been our HR department has been working through individual cases because every situation is different and unique. But I would just say to encourage staff to reach out, and then the particular office would be working with them and working with the supervisor to see what the next steps will be. But we provided, go ahead, I'm sorry.
There would be some understanding, though, should a teacher be frightened, concerned, and have legitimate health reasons for possibly not going in right away until they get the vaccine.
So yeah, there would be a legitimate inquiry regarding a health concern. However, I've noticed in talking to our principals, the several schools that I visited, it's helpful that staff members are there. It's also helpful so they can themselves kind of talk through, this is what it felt like the first day. But yes, when a legitimate health concern would be reviewed and some additional steps may be placed on the staff, placed on the supervisor as we look at every case. Because every case is different.
Okay, and one more question regarding the ransomware. I have auto insurance in Maryland. You're required to have it. If you have an accident, it's reported. The insurance company takes care of it. You, as the purchaser of the insurance policy, really have no say in what goes on at all. None whatsoever. You can't ask what's going on. They won't tell you. In this particular situation with ransomware, is the decision as to whether or not to pay the ransomware the decision of the insurance company or the decision of the school system? In the case of auto insurance, it would be the insurance carrier's decision, not the insured. And I'm wondering what the situation is here. And also, as far as the insurance goes, are you, is repair of the system part of what's covered?
I didn't hear the last part, but I would say it's a collaboration of the school system and the insurance company or our vendors as we move forward, but I didn't hear the last part.
I basically said with the repair of the system, is that covered in the insurance policy?
So it's just like any insurance, you are covered for a certain amount and
Right.
there's a deductible. So at this point,
What's that?
I'm sorry.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, so at this point, as we are still in the repair and recovery, as the previous question was raised, I'll have an idea. The school board will have an idea as to if we're fully covered or there's some additional expenses based on our repair and recovery process. We are still in the midst of that. So I don't have a final answer for the final dollars, but we're still in the midst of that.
And I'm very happy to hear that in the case of Baltimore County Public Schools, if there is some concern with a COVID outbreak, that each school is going to be taken individually to determine what the correct answer or what the correct answers will be or the action to be taken will be. I've been asked by many parents, why can't I call a phone number and have them tell me should there be a certain percent outbreak of COVID, what's going to happen in any particular school. And I think that with 175, 200 schools, that's not exactly realistic, considering some schools were built recently and others maybe 40, 50 years ago. So I appreciate the system's approach, and we all look forward to this ending as soon as possible. It looks like it may have cost you some weight. Is that a good thing? You've lost weight? Well, in the face you look like you have. I wish I could say that, but
well, I think what I will respond to this. I think for all of us that just recently, my cabinet and I, we had a conversation regarding self-care. And so, as individuals, you're looking out for others.
Yes.
Your departments, your offices, people with whom you work, and you always got to remember to take care of yourself. So, I'm fortunate that I'm married to a nurse. She works in the nearby hospital, Kennedy Krieger Institute. And so self-care is important. Drinking water. I don't know if you saw me, I was picking up my water. All those little things, they really pay off at the end, because you can't really give it your best if you're not taking care of yourself. So,
amen. Amen.
Say that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Catch. I know the hour is getting late. We have another meeting, so I'm going to ask Councilman, we have
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Crandall and
Patoka.
Councilman Patoka.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Williams, question related to Blueprint for Maryland's Future and also Blueprint and Build to Learn. So our General Assembly had the fortitude to overturn the governor's veto of these bills. One dealt with the operating side and curriculum side. The other dealt with the physical infrastructure and physical plant of school buildings. So when those two pieces of legislation were initially introduced, it was pre-COVID. And so I assume that the county school system had kind of a game plan on both Blueprint and also Build to Learn. And so now, post-COVID, are we revisiting both of those pieces of legislation? And I think they were combined to see on the operating side what modifications we have to initiate for students that might need assistance because of the virtual learning and and the kind of situation we've been in for the past year. And then secondarily, on the physical plant side, on Build to Learn, are there long-term modifications to our school physical plant in terms of number of students in a classroom, distancing in a classroom that may be long-term? I think in the private sector and office buildings, office sizes may change, and I just was wondering if there's a similar kind of set of thinking going on in the way we educate our children.
So thank you, Mr. Pataka, for that question. It's interesting about the modification to the physical plant. As we get updates from CDC, it went from 6 feet to the extent as possible, because I think what you're raising, if we continue to have the social distancing, our facilities, if we bring back everyone, how would you social distance 500 kids in an elementary school, 2,000 students in a secondary school? And so that's an interesting question. We haven't changed our plans around the physical construct, because the earlier question, I think, was Mr. Quirk that asked the question. It's our hope that we can get back to 5 days and look at the social distancing. I will say what I worry about a little bit is not only the learning, but definitely the social, emotional well-being of our students and staff. And so this has been so traumatic for all of us, is that to make sure we have the necessary, a part of the curve when we were looking at a health coordinator, community individual. So that whole school community kind of resources, I think that's going to be very important as we eventually go back to some sense of normalcy, to make sure we have that social, emotional, and well-being for our students. And so I can use some CARES funds for that, to look at how we can support our students and how we can bring them back. But yeah, I think you raised a good question. Right now, we haven't changed the physical plant because the things keep changing. We get updates every so often from CDC about all of these mitigation strategies. And again, it's my hope that we can get back to some sense of normalcy.
And it may even have broader implication in how the Interagency for School Construction looks at state-rated capacity. So we'll see how all of that turns out moving forward, not only for the next school year, but the years that follow.
Yes, I think you're right on that. You're right on with that. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. I believe if we have Councilwoman Bevins holding her hand up, and I haven't heard anything from Crandall.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. Someone private messaged me who was listening to this. They are a teacher, they are a member of TABCO, and they are disagreeing with the way that it's being handled with the payroll. And that only when their attorney and Cindy Saxton is CC'd on any kind of say email to anyone at the school system, do they get an answer? So that's just a comment, it's not a question. They wanted me to bring it up. They said there's still problems with people being able to talk to someone about their payroll issue.
So I'm sorry to hear about that situation with that staff. I would say if they're not getting a response, that individual or individuals to please reach out to Maria Lowry, or payroll, I'm sorry, Brian Scriven. Brian Scriven, Dr. Scriven is on the call. He oversees the administrative and operations side of the house.
Okay.
So we'll be
Okay,
happy to deal with
Okay,
these
they're
cases
listening.
one-on-one.
Okay, they're listening, so I'm sure they just got that name. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Williams, I guess have a few questions. First of all, I agree and want to give a big shout out to Tony Bazemore for his efforts in keeping us informed, and we certainly appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. I know it's a very challenging time for all of us. I'm just curious, can you tell me what steps are taken, or do we know what the absentee rate was in terms of virtual learning for our students? Were they all online, or if they were not online, what steps did we take to make sure they got online?
So if they weren't online, first of all, the staff themselves, the teacher, would try to engage with that family. But every school has a team, a student support team, in which they are monitoring the student attendance and looking at ways to engage. We did that the first time back in the spring through the summer, where we noticed some students weren't engaged. That's where we really stepped up with the hotspots and the laptops. So at this point, if there's some concerns, there's the school-based team, and then if they need additional support, we also have our pupil personnel workers, social workers, and a central office team that can provide support. That's been helpful when we first look at the schools and see what they need, and then we look at our central office to provide any additional support.
Okay, I guess the next question is what has been the percentage of students that are eligible to return to school who in fact return to school, or what projections do you have in terms of the number of students that will return?
So we did a survey of our families, and overall it ranged from 40 to 50% in terms of hybrid learning. But then every school is different. What we saw in some cases, parents said they wanted to participate, but then maybe decided not to, or wanted to kind of see how the first week was going. We're also getting requests for those who said they were going to do strictly virtual to then make a change. And so every principal, every school has what we have as a process. It's about a 2-week process to see which cohort that child can be a part of. And so what I saw as I visited schools, we had a range of 40 to 50% saying they would participate, but on the first week, the numbers vary from school to school.
Okay, and are there any, I guess I was wondering, did you have any information about the teachers and their how comfortable they were with returning? And I know you had touched on it before, so I guess you can just give a real brief answer in terms of the process for teachers if they felt uncomfortable.
So
and I have a shot.
Sure. So working with, I meet weekly with our union presidents and executive directors, and several weeks ago, I looked at the data that our teachers did a survey, and that data was presented. It was maybe half and half. Some felt comfortable in returning, some did not. The other piece that we wanted to know, how many of our staff members were interested in getting the vaccine. And so of the 16,000, we had about 11,000 to respond. And of that 11,000, roughly 80% of our staff said they would be interested in the vaccine. So we looked at the data to determine how this may look if we start bringing back students. And it was helpful when we were sharing the news about our vaccines and really working the vaccine with those staff members that were scheduled to come back. We of course, just like any place, we just waiting to get additional vaccines so we can get more staff members to have that option of getting vaccinated.
Okay, and then I had a couple of more real fast. Who is in charge as it relates to the ransomware? Like, who's in charge of the investigation? Is it the insurance company? Is it the FBI? Who's in charge? At the top of that hierarchy, who's calling out?
So in terms of the investigation, that is working with our experts who are working with FBI, et cetera. When it comes to the repair and recovery, then our vendors are working directly with our Department of Instructional Technology and Human Resources to repair and recover. So there's several things that's going on. So again, I just have to say there's several things that are going on when we look at the cyber attack.
Who's in charge? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead, Councilwoman Bevins was just, I guess, following up on the question. Who?
There's somebody in charge. There always is. Who is at the top of this? Who is in charge? Who's leading the investigation and releasing the information? There's somebody in charge.
So I'll be happy to follow up with that if you're looking for specific names. I think that would be.
I think the organization would be okay. I mean, I'm guessing like if this is a criminal probe, then I'm guessing like maybe the FBI would be involved, be in charge. But then if it's another situation where maybe it's a civil issue, then maybe the FBI would be providing support for the insurance company. I mean, I don't know. That's why, we were just trying to figure out who's in charge.
Yeah. So I don't want to misspeak, but I think I will have to follow up with you on that.
Okay, so the vendors are working with your staff.
Yes.
Okay. And then I see, I know we have, we'll be brief. I know we have another one from Councilwoman Bevins, and I believe Councilman Quirk has a question as well. Councilwoman Bevins, did you have anything else?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Sure. Councilman Quirk?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Superintendent. Obviously we've talked a fair amount about the pay stubs and the W-2s, unfortunately being met, a lot of problems and challenges there. And then in addition, of course, no leave I know was showing up. No leave was actually showing for many. And then a big problem, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just things I'm hearing from constituents, is a lot of teachers and people lost their health and life insurance coverage. And I know of one particular teacher who had a brain tumor removed in November and could not get their follow-up for the MRI because there was literally no coverage. And so unfortunately, this teacher had to even postpone the MRI. And so I just wanted to make sure that the school system was very aware of the significant problems that have been created and just get reassurances that this problem is being fixed and being dealt with as aggressively as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the situation that you shared is a sad situation, but we are working diligently to restore these services. And so we all have been impacted, but I'm sorry to hear about that one individual. We have said that if during this process that I'm aware of, that if folks were trying to get a loan on their house, refinance, other kind of life situations, that we would be able back in November, December, even January, to provide some additional clarity for an individual. But I'm sorry to hear about this one situation. And as you say, we're working through the pay stubs, the W-2s, and eventually we want to recover the leave in terms of what our staff members have. And so, as I described, that was probably the hardest hit for a school system, to have this cyber attack and to restore our human resources and our enterprise. So I appreciate you raising that point, Mr. Quirk.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Crandall.
Go ahead, Councilman Crandall. You've been looking
Thank
for
you. I think that I think that my colleagues have done a pretty thorough job of questioning Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams, I appreciate the update. However, I need to let you know that the amount of frustration that the council is feeling and that our constituents are feeling with so many issues, from ransomware to hybrid learning, to the pressure that the students and parents had to put on the school system just to have the kids be able to play sports. So we talk a lot in Baltimore County. We talk a lot about equity, and the students and the kids that could play rec sports in a private league have been playing through the whole pandemic. But our facilities aren't open to those students to play until recently. And I don't think, and I'm just expressing the frustration that my constituents have expressed to me, that there is not an equity in this system. And it's not fair to our kids who are unable to socialize, to play sports with any sort of protocols that the system has put in place. So I don't really have a question for you. I'm just expressing that frustration. It's been 3 months since the ransomware attack, and the county council, who is the fiduciary for Baltimore County Public Schools, still has no more information 3 months later than we had when this thing first came about. So I need to express to you, Dr. Williams, the amount of frustration that is out there in BCPS. Yet I can't impress upon you enough that you need to realize that it's out there, and people are angry. Parents are angry. They don't feel that their kids are being treated fairly. I will also go back to when schools were first shut down. Councilman Marks and Councilman Katz and I sent you a letter saying, how can we help bridge the gap between students who don't have access to the internet to do virtual learning, which in my estimation has been a failure. But your response was, thank you for your service, and we'll take a survey. There was no further dialogue with the council to see if we could do something with Comcast or some of the other internet providers to bridge the digital gap that a lot of students feel in Baltimore County. So I think you can hear the frustration in my voice. It's not directed at you personally. However, I'm not speaking up for my constituents if I don't express this to you.
So, thank you, Mr. Crandall. I think a part of today was to have more time with the county council and again, trying to provide some updates and understand the frustration with all that we had to deal with this health pandemic and then the cyber attack. And so, again, we know that there's areas for improvement, but I understand that there's been mixed opinions about every area. And so I understand where you're coming from, and we will try and work really hard to lessen this frustration. And so a part of that was just to provide some updates today, but we will continue to work through these issues and to make sure our families know what we are doing.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yes, Councilman, was it Catch?
Catch, yes. Yes, Dr. Williams, there are some teachers in northern Baltimore County who have no access to internet, who have gotten from the Baltimore County school system the wherewithal to connect. Is that equipment also available to students?
So we were able to provide hotspots for our students, just like we were able to support some of our teachers. There were some teachers that needed to have hotspots as well. So we took care of a lot of those requests back in the spring and summer, and maybe had some as we started this current school year, if I heard your question correctly. So whatever we can do to keep our kids connected with staff members, we have been working hard to provide those services.
So what I'll do is have students who don't have internet connection see if there is still any availability of the equipment, which will get them connected. My
Yes.
second question, I'm very upset hearing Councilman Quirks about his constituent who had who has cancer. I guess I don't understand. Is it that the county stopped paying for health insurance because of the ransomware attack?
That is not my understanding, but that would be a follow-up. If Mr. Quirk wants to share that name, we'll be able to see what the circumstances. Unfortunately, I can't speak to that.
Right. Let me just say that what individuals need to do when they have problems like that is call the Maryland Insurance Commissioner. That has been the fastest way for me to deal with constituent issues like that. So it's the Maryland Insurance Commissioner. So Tom, maybe you can tell your constituent that, and because this is a ridiculous situation. You know, if you opt for a particular insurance, it's paid. I don't understand what is going on here, why this person would be denied the service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Catch. Go ahead. Did you want to respond to that?
No, I just think we're happy to follow up. I didn't hear all of Mr. Katz in piece, but it sounds like he had a good resource.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is he, and even myself, don't understand why a person would be denied. I mean, why a person would not have medical coverage. That's a different story, and I'm sure Councilman Quirk will follow up. I know the hour is late and we're 20 minutes late for our meeting, but I did have one more question, just so some of us can understand. Dr. Williams, can you just explain why people feel, well, let's not talk about why they feel. Can you explain why you can't just come forth and tell everything you know? Do you know everything that's going on? Can you just explain to us the constraints you have as to why you cannot just tell us and the world everything that you know?
So there are constraints, and there is still an ongoing investigation, and so that's why I have these constraints in sharing information at this time. So I can talk about the recovery aspect, but in terms of the investigation, I am constrained by an ongoing investigation.
Okay, so is that the
However,
FBI telling you not to talk?
However, what I can do is, it's a combination of several things. It's an ongoing investigation, but I've heard it clearly today that I would follow up with the board leadership to see if there are some next steps. But definitely, there's an interest around the investigation aspect of it. And I'm constrained by this ongoing investigation in this setting as we speak. But again, that's something I'll be happy to take back to the board leadership.
Okay. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I certainly realize, I mean, I was just trying to get to the bottom and basically try to help you out by saying, can you tell us why you can't talk? And just point the finger at somebody else and say, FBI told me not to say, the board told me not to say, the insurance company told me not to say. I mean, throw them all under the bus, because right now you're the guy sitting on the hot seat and everybody's looking at you as if you're the guy that's not sharing the information. So if there's some constraints, I'll just give you one more stab at it if you want, or if not, we'll just move on. Anyway,
But
I
Mr.
take it that's a not.
Yes, Chairman Jones,
Woman Bevins.
know is why did we just spend an hour and 26 minutes at a meeting, and then we're late for a work session, and I learned nothing today. I learned absolutely nothing today. None of my questions were fully answered. The texting that has went on about all these questions, I don't think that one person has had their questions answered, right down to CARES money. And that right there should be at the top of your head. How much was spent? What was it spent on? How much is left? What are you going to do with it? I just don't understand. You are the superintendent of Baltimore County Schools, and you can't say nothing about nothing. And I'm just going to leave it there.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bevins. Dr. Williams, you can respond if you like or not. We'll just call it a day. It's totally up to you.
Well, I made the commitment to follow up on some of the particulars, and I will do that. Again, it was my hope to give you a brief update where we were. And again, we'll continue to have these dialogues. We'll continue to share information. And of course, there's some things that I said I will follow up with the council. And I appreciate this time. It was my hope that folks will walk away with some questions. And if there's still some questions that you're getting from the constituents, we have provided additional support doing this work that we want to deal with each case differently, because every case is different. So that was my hope for today. So I appreciate the time and effort.
Okay, Dr. Williams, listen, I thank you so much. Like I said at the beginning of the meeting, this was, you came to us and said you wanted to update us, and we appreciate you taking the time. And we realize this is some trying times for everybody. And, this is unprecedented for us, folks that are here today in terms of the COVID, in terms of the ransomware. I can only imagine how difficult it is, but it is good that we're moving ahead and getting our kids back to some sense of normalcy. And it's good that the parents have an option with the kids, and it's good to know that they're exercising them. Are there any problems with transportation, Dr. Williams?
I am not aware of any major problems with transportation. Maybe working through some kinks with pickup and drop off, but I'm not aware of major transportation issues. We'll continue to phase in our students and still look at transportation. Some of our families have agreed to drop off their kid or walk their student to school. So again, nothing major at this time, which is good news.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time, and we certainly appreciate everybody that's watching and all of their interests and concerns. And that's it. I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Williams.
Thank you.